Humans split the atom and walked on the moon. Yet some of us still check fuel levels with a lighter. Today we are looking at 49 dumbest ways people died. The absolute champions of the Darwin Awards, who looked common sense in the eye and said, "No thanks." Prepare for a masterclass in spectacular, completely avoidable human failure that proves evolution takes days off. Do not attempt. 1. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but this genius decided to serve it buzzing and furious. Fed up with a noisy neighbor, a man concocted a biological warfare plan involving a live hornet nest. He attempted to shove the fragile paper ball through the neighbor's mail slot, forgetting that physics and anger don't mix well. The nest crumbled in his hands, instantly releasing hundreds of combat-ready insects. The problem? He was standing in his own small glass-enclosed porch. He essentially locked himself in a gladiator arena, with a swarm of stinging fury, blocking the only exit with his own body. The neighbor, safely inside wearing noise-canceling headphones, didn't hear a thing, while the man outside learned a painful lesson about structural integrity. 2. We have all watched cartoons where a coyote straps himself to a giant rubber band, but usually we understand that is not a tutorial for real life. An amateur stuntman in Arizona missed that memo. Lacking an actual cannon for his human cannonball dreams, he constructed a massive slingshot using surgical tubing and 2 telephone poles. It was a marvel of backyard engineering and zero math skills. His friends pulled him back and let fly, but his trajectory calculations were wildly optimistic. Instead of hitting the safety net, he sailed right over it and introduced himself to the asphalt of the parking lot. Gravity remains undefeated, especially when you ignore the laws of physics. 3. In the cutthroat world of urban parking, people do desperate things, but this takes the gold medal for bad ideas. A man decided to reserve a prime spot for his buddy by physically lying down in the empty space. His logic was that no 2-ton metal machine would dare run over a human being. Unfortunately, he failed to account for the modern driver's greatest weakness, the smartphone. A driver pulling into the spot was so engrossed in their screen that they treated the human speed bump exactly like empty pavement. It turns out playing a game of chicken with an SUV while lying on the ground is a guaranteed way to lose. 4. If you've watched too many movies about street racing, you might think nitrous oxide is just a magic potion that makes cars fly. A Los Angeles racer installed a nitrous system and, purely for the cool factor, routed the purge valve to shoot flames from under the chassis. It looked spectacular for about 3 seconds. During a race, a leak filled the cockpit with invisible gas. When he triggered his fancy flamethrower to show off, he did not just light up the undercarriage, he ignited the gas inside the vehicle. He effectively turned his ride into a rolling, high-speed crematorium, proving that looking cool and being on fire are 2 very different things. 5. Staying cool in the summer heat drives people to innovation, but sometimes innovation requires a basic understanding of electricity. A man trying to beat the heat on his patio rigged up a garden hose to mist water directly into a large industrial fan. It created a lovely cooling breeze right up until the water pooled on the floor. He failed to notice that the fan's power cord was frayed and resting directly in the growing puddle. As he sat in his damp chair enjoying the mist, the water completed the circuit, and he was electrocuted by his own air conditioning system. It was a shocking end to a relaxing afternoon, brought to you by a lack of safety standards. 6. In a classic case of man versus nature, nature usually wins because nature does not use exhaust fumes in enclosed spaces. An Alabama farmer was tired of a groundhog digging up his property, so he ran a hose from his truck's exhaust pipe into the burrow to smoke it out. He sat in the truck to supervise, engine running, windows rolled up tight, and promptly fell asleep, While he was busy napping and inhaling carbon monoxide, the groundhog likely exited through a back door. The farmer never woke up, marking a decisive victory for the rodent population. It is arguably the most successful counterattack by a woodland creature in history. 7. Obsessive-compulsive tendencies can be annoying, but rarely are they fatal, unless you are driving a heavy vehicle. An ice cream truck driver became fixated on a peeling corner of a large decal on the side of his truck. Instead of pulling over like a sane person, he decided to fix it on the go. He leaned his entire upper body out of the window, steering with one hand, trying to smooth out the sticker while rolling through a neighborhood. He was so focused on the vinyl that he didn't see the low-hanging oak branch. The branch caught him squarely at neck level. The truck kept rolling, and the cheerful looping music kept playing to an empty street long after the driver was gone. 8. We all hate paper jams. They are the absolute bane of modern office life. But most of us have the self-preservation instinct to unplug the machine before sticking our fingers into the metal teeth. One office worker, however, was too impatient for safety protocols. He reached into a jammed shredder with his bare hands to clear a blockage without cutting the power. The machine's auto sensor worked perfectly. It detected an object, his hand, and resumed its job of shredding. It pulled him in with industrial efficiency. It is a grim reminder that machines do not have mercy, and they definitely do not know the difference between a memo and a metacarpal. 9. Stealing a massive bronze statue usually requires a crane, a flatbed truck, and a basic grasp of Newtonian physics. Two aspiring art thieves in Poland possessed none of these things. One genius climbed up to dislodge the heavy monument, while his partner stood directly underneath to guide it down gently. It turns out, half a ton of bronze falls with a bit more authority than a feather pillow. The statue obeyed gravity perfectly, and the catcher unwittingly became a permanent, flattened part of the pavement. It was a crushing defeat for their criminal enterprise, proving that some plans are simply too heavy to handle manually. 10. The view from an abandoned 200-foot smokestack is breathtaking, but the express route down is breathtaking for a very different reason. A teenager decided the safety ladder was too slow and opted to slide down the rails like a fireman. He forgot that fireman poles are usually 1 story high, not 20. He picked up speed instantly, turning into a human blur. The friction became unbearable. His grip failed against the sheer velocity, and he was launched into a freefall that ended very abruptly. It was a high-speed lesson in terminal velocity that he didn't get to share with his friends. 11. Escaping prison requires a master plan, but hiding inside a massive manure spreader is arguably the worst strategy in penal history. An inmate managed to stow away inside the farm equipment, successfully evading the guard's search. He felt quite clever until the next morning when the farmer hooked up the machine to fertilize the fields. The inmate wasn't discovered by the guards, but he was definitely distributed by the farmer. The machinery did exactly what it was designed to do, spreading him across several acres, along with the rest of the fertilizer. It gives a whole new meaning to having a really crappy day at work. 12. Sword swallowing is an ancient art form that requires extreme concentration, a very still esophagus, and absolute silence. During a heated street performance, a professional swallower was interrupted by a rude heckler. Instead of ignoring the noise, the performer let his ego take the wheel. He tried to shout a witty comeback, while a 2-foot blade was still fully inserted down his throat. The sudden sharp contraction of his vocal cords and throat muscles against the cold steel resulted in a fatal internal injury. He successfully silenced the heckler with the shock of the moment, but the price was a lot higher than the loose change in his hat. 13. There is a reason professional movers use dollies and not $50 office chairs. An office worker needed to move a massive top-heavy filing cabinet and decided his rolling chair was the perfect tool. He balanced the metal beast on the seat, which is already a feat of questionable judgment. The moment he gave it a shove, the chair did what wheels do. It shot out from underneath at high speed. The cabinet, obeying the laws of leverage, toppled over and pinned him to the floor with crushing weight. He saved a few bucks on a mover, but paid the ultimate price in the workers' comp claim. 14. Divorce can make people do petty things, but this takes the gold medal for self-sabotage. Determined that his ex-wife wouldn't get their shared boat, a man took it out to the middle of the lake to scuttle it. He drilled holes in the hull, watching with satisfaction as the water rushed in. There was just one tiny detail he overlooked in his blind rage. He didn't know how to swim. As the boat sank, so did his plan for revenge. He went down with the ship, proving that spite is a heavy anchor to carry when you're treading deep water. 15. Professional mechanics use hydraulic lifts. This backyard genius used cinder blocks and mud. Wanting to fix his transmission, he propped his 2-ton pickup truck onto 4 brittle concrete blocks placed on soft, wet soil. He slid underneath to start working, apparently skipping the chapter on ground stability in the manual. As he wrenched on a bolt, the vibration caused the blocks to crumble and sink simultaneously. The truck came down instantly, turning a quick repair job into a permanent situation. He saved $50 on a mechanic, but paid a much steeper price for ignoring physics. 16. Trimming a tall hedge usually requires a ladder and hedge clippers. A man in Los Angeles decided that was too much work and opted for a creative solution. He started his heavy, gas-powered lawnmower and lifted it over his head to trim the top of the bushes. He failed to consider 2 things: the weight of the machine and the force of gravity. As his arms tired, the spinning blades tipped downward. He fought the machine, but gravity won the wrestling match. It was a gruesome reminder that lawnmowers are strictly ground vehicles, not handheld grooming tools. 17. Warning signs like high voltage usually aren't decorative suggestions. A janitor at a science museum decided the inside of a giant Tesla coil display needed a good dusting. He ignored the flashing lights and signs, assuming the exhibit was powered down for the night. He was incorrect. As he stepped inside to wipe down the coils, the machine engaged, making him the primary conductor in a 1,000,000-volt circuit. He became the centerpiece of a spectacular, unscheduled light show. He certainly left the exhibit spotless, but he also left the building in a coroner's van. 18. Finding an artifact on the beach is exciting. Finding unexploded ordnance requires a phone call to the bomb squad. An amateur archaeologist found a 19th century cannonball and, consumed by curiosity, wanted to see the inside. Instead of an X-ray, he used a power drill. He failed to realize that black powder doesn't expire like milk. The friction from the drill bit ignited the ancient explosive, and the cannonball did exactly what it was built to do 150 years ago. It was a delayed blast from the past that permanently ended his hobby, along with his kitchen table. 19. Virtual reality is immersive, but for one Moscow gamer, it became deadly real. Playing a zombie survival game, he physically jumped back to dodge a digital attack. He completely forgot about the solid glass coffee table directly behind him. He crashed through the plate glass, landing heavily on the jagged shards. The impact caused fatal internal trauma, but disoriented by the headset and the game's noise, he didn't realize the severity of the situation until it was too late. He lost his life on his living room floor, a victim of poor room layout and zero situational awareness. 20. New Age spiritualism usually involves harmless crystals and bad incense, not ancient booby traps. A self-proclaimed guru seeking a cosmic vortex snuck into a sealed pyramid chamber. To achieve purity, he stripped naked and started chanting, which apparently annoyed the spirits. His vibrations dislodged a loose stone, triggering a sand-based counterweight mechanism left by builders who clearly hated trespassers. A massive block slammed shut, sealing him inside. Archaeologists found him a year later, perfectly preserved. He wanted to become one with the cosmos. Instead, he became a DIY mummy, achieved not through mysticism, but through spectacular historical ignorance. 21. At a rowdy punk show, a man named Spike decided that physics didn't apply to him. Fueled by cheap beer and a massive ego, he climbed a speaker stack for the ultimate stage dive. He looked out at the mosh pit, a swirling vortex of chaos, and assumed they would catch him like a fallen angel. He launched his 250-pound frame into the air. The crowd, valuing their own spinal cords, instinctively parted like the Red Sea. Spike found the concrete floor instead of adoring hands. The sickening crunch was louder than the guitar feedback, proving that while punk might be dead, gravity is very much alive. 22. Technology frustrates us all, but usually we just yell at the screen. A man in Russia decided on a more terminal reboot for his faulty CRT television. He hauled the heavy box to his fifth-floor window and heaved it into the abyss. But throwing it wasn't enough. He needed the satisfaction of watching it shatter. He leaned his entire upper body out the window, eager for the show. Unfortunately, he forgot about his center of gravity. As the TV plummeted, he tipped forward and joined it in free fall. He managed to catch up with his appliance on the pavement below for a very messy final reunion. 23. We all love free stuff, but the cost-benefit analysis here was severely flawed. An overzealous baseball fan spotted a foul ball heading his way. Instead of staying safe, he climbed onto a narrow concrete railing high above the lower deck. Prioritizing a $5 souvenir over his equilibrium, he lunged into the void. To his credit, he made a spectacular one-handed catch. It was an ESPN-worthy highlight, immediately followed by a 20-foot headfirst dive onto the seats below. He secured the ball, but he failed to secure his footing, proving that gravity doesn't care about your batting average. 24. Some people watch too many Disney movies and forget that apex predators aren't looking for friends. A man convinced he could vibe with animals broke into a zoo enclosure during feeding time. He approached a 200-pound grizzly bear with arms wide open, offering positive energy and friendship. The bear, busy eating actual food, found this interruption rude. It responded to his offer of friendship with a very physical, very permanent rebuttal. The man's theory of interspecies communication was decisively disproven in seconds. It turns out a bear's love language involves teeth, claws, and zero tolerance for trespassers. 25. Bar bets are rarely intellectual exercises, but this one set a new low for human intelligence. To win $50, a Florida man bet he could swallow a billiard ball. Amazingly, he succeeded. He forced the solid resin sphere past his gag reflex, where it lodged perfectly in his throat, creating an airtight seal. He technically won the bet. The ball was gone, but he also forfeited his right to breathe. The patrons watched in horror as he turned blue, realizing too late that winning the pot is useless if you can't cash out. It was a perfect shot, straight into the corner pocket of the afterlife. 26. Parkour is impressive when done on concrete. It is less reliable when you involve landscaping. A would-be urban ninja attempted a cinematic leap from a rooftop to a nearby tree branch. He nailed the jump and caught the limb, which would have been cool if trees were made of steel. The wood, unimpressed by his athleticism, snapped instantly under his weight. He plummeted to the ground, learning a hard lesson about botany and structural integrity. It turns out, nature doesn't provide safety ratings for its branches, and gravity is always waiting to penalize a failed stunt with a broken neck. 27. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, But hell also has better safety protocols. Furious at her ex-boyfriend, a woman decided to torch his car. She doused the vehicle in gallons of gasoline, operating on the more is better principle. The fumes alone created a highly volatile cloud around her. When she struck the match, she didn't just ignite the car, she ignited the atmosphere she was standing in. The resulting fireball consumed the vehicle and the arsonist instantly. She wanted to send a heated message to her ex. Instead, she became the primary victim of her own fiery temper tantrum. 28. Bungee jumping requires precise math, specifically regarding the length of the cord versus the height of the drop. An amateur thrill seeker decided to tape several bungee cords together to jump off a 70-foot trestle. He measured the cords perfectly to equal slightly less than 70 feet. However, he forgot one crucial detail. Bungee cords stretch. When he jumped, the cords did exactly what they are designed to do. He hit the ground at full speed before the elasticity kicked in, proving that understanding material physics is just as important as knowing how to use a tape measure. 29. Alcohol often convinces men they are superheroes with supernatural senses. During a drunken argument, a man claimed he had the reflexes of a ninja and could catch an arrow fired straight up. He grabbed his bow, stumbled into the yard, and launched a hunting arrow vertically into the night sky. He stood there, swaying and looking up into the darkness, waiting to prove his point. The arrow, obeying the laws of gravity, returned to Earth silently and swiftly. He never saw it coming, but he certainly felt it. He successfully proved his point about gravity, but failed spectacularly at the catching part of the demonstration. 30. Bogdan, a Romanian farmer with sticky fingers, coveted his neighbor's prize sheep. Under the cover of darkness, he wrestled the heavy animal onto his shoulders and made his escape. Avoiding the main gate, he opted to hop over a low stone wall at the back of the property. It was a brilliant plan, except for the uncovered, overgrown well hidden directly on the other side. As he vaulted over, the struggling sheep threw off his balance, and they both plunged into the abyss. He was found days later, having successfully hidden the evidence of his crime by burying himself along with it. 31. Laziness is a common human trait, but in a chemical plant, it is usually fatal. A maintenance worker needed to flush a line but didn't want to drag the heavy hose across the room to the clearly marked water drain. Instead, he saw a pipe right next to him labeled molten sulfur danger. He assumed the sign was just a suggestion and connected the water hose. When water hits molten sulfur, it expands into steam instantly and violently. The resulting explosion was volcanic, erasing the worker and a large portion of the room. It was a high-pressure lesson in why we read warning labels. 32. Deep-sea fishing is supposed to be man against beast, but the beast usually doesn't have a sword. A fisherman hooked a massive swordfish and, impatient for the photo op, decided to bring it aboard while it was still green and full of fight. He skipped the part where you tire the fish out. As he leaned over to grab the leader, the enraged fish saw its opening. It launched a final powerful lunge, impaling the fisherman with its bill. He wanted to catch a trophy. Instead, the trophy caught him, proving that you should never bring a knife to a swordfish fight. 33. Household chores are boring, but shortcuts can be explosive. A man decided his toilet bowl was too dirty for standard cleaners, so he poured a gallon of industrial-strength paint thinner into the bowl to soak. He closed the lid and let the fumes build up in the small, unventilated bathroom. Later, he sat down and lit a cigarette. The spark ignited the concentrated fumes, turning the ceramic bowl into a fragmentation grenade. He was blown off his throne in a blast that destroyed the plumbing and proved that flammable solvents and open flames are a terrible mix for bathroom hygiene. 34. We all love high-octane action movies, but we often forget that Vin Diesel relies on stunt doubles, wires, and CGI. An amateur stuntman decided to recreate a highway hijacking scene by jumping from the passenger window of one moving car to the hood of another. He made the leap with confidence, but he forgot that car hoods are waxed, polished, and incredibly slippery. He lost his footing instantly upon landing and slid directly under the wheels of the car he was trying to board. It was a gritty, realistic reboot that ended before the director could even yell, "Cut." 35. To win a local chili cook-off, an aspiring chef decided that flavor was secondary to agonizing pain. He used a blend of the world's hottest peppers, including the Carolina Reaper. To prove his toughness to the judges, he didn't just eat one. He crushed a dried pod in his hand and took a deep theatrical sniff to appreciate the bouquet. He effectively snorted weaponized pepper dust directly into his respiratory system. His throat and lungs reacted by swelling shut instantly. He collapsed in front of the judges, winning the unofficial award for the shortest culinary career in history and proving that some ingredients are best left in the kitchen, not the sinus cavity. 36. The breatharian lifestyle sounds appealing if you hate grocery shopping, but biology has a strict no-refund policy. A self-proclaimed health guru promoted a diet consisting exclusively of sunlight and water, insisting that food was a toxic addiction. He told his concerned followers that his rapidly failing body was simply detoxing and reaching a state of higher purification. Eventually, his organs decided they preferred calories over cosmic rays. He passed away from starvation, proving that while plants can photosynthesize, humans definitely need a sandwich every now and then to remain on this side of the grass. 37. A corporate lawyer in a high-rise office wanted to demonstrate the unbreakable strength of the skyscraper's windows to a group of law students. He had performed this party trick many times before, running and throwing his full weight against the glass. Technically, he was right. The glass did not break. However, the metal frame holding it in place finally gave way under the repeated stress. He didn't fall through the window. He fell with the window, riding the pane down 24 stories. He successfully proved the glass quality, but failed the test of structural engineering and gravity. 38. We all hate losing things, but most of us draw the line at risking our lives for a beverage container. A janitor at a food processing plant realized he left his favorite thermos inside a large tank just as the automated sterilization cycle was starting. The cycle was controlled by a massive pressure-sealed door. Believing he was faster than the hydraulic system, he propped the door open with a wooden mop handle and darted inside. The machine, unimpressed by the wood, snapped the handle like a toothpick and sealed the door. He was trapped just as the high-temperature steam jets activated, turning a retrieval mission into a tragic mistake. 39. Checking the fuel level in a dark tank is tricky, but using an open flame to see better is a special kind of stupid. A man couldn't see how much gasoline was left in his truck's reservoir. Instead of using a flashlight or a dipstick, he flicked his cigarette lighter near the opening to get a better look. The fumes, which are invisible and highly flammable, ignited instantly. The resulting explosion didn't just illuminate the tank, it illuminated the entire neighborhood. He found out exactly how much gas was left, enough to send him and his truck into orbit. 40. There's a significant difference between a knife and a chainsaw, primarily in the horsepower department. A street performer in London bought a stab-proof vest and felt invincible. To dazzle the crowd, he asked his assistant to touch a running chainsaw to his chest. He failed to read the fine print. The vest's fibers were designed to stop a stationary blade, not a motorized chain spinning at 60 miles per hour. The saw shredded the protective gear instantly and struck the man beneath. The show ended abruptly, and the audience learned a valuable lesson about testing product limitations in real time. 41. The margin for error in aviation is usually measured in thousands of feet. This pilot measured it in inches. An amateur enthusiast built his own ultralight aircraft and decided to take it for a spin. Feeling daring, he attempted to fly underneath a low bridge to impress onlookers. He miscalculated the clearance by a fraction of a foot. The bridge's concrete support sheared off the top of the fragile aircraft, specifically the section where the pilot was sitting. It was a gruesome reminder that when you play chicken with civil engineering, the bridge always wins. 42. Urban exploration is a popular hobby, but sewer kayaking is a genre that should not exist. A group of friends waited for a heavy rainstorm to turn the local storm drains into a water slide. They jumped in with kayaks, enjoying the fast-flowing current in the dark tunnels. They were having a great time right up until they reached the end of the line. They failed to anticipate the steel safety grate designed to filter out debris. The rushing water pinned them against the metal bars with crushing force, turning their adventure into a fatal lesson in fluid dynamics. 43. Gold fever can make people do incredibly stupid things. A man discovered a hole on his property and convinced himself it was a secret cave filled with treasure. Eager for fame, he entered alone without telling a soul or bringing oxygen gear. It wasn't a cave, it was an abandoned, unventilated mine shaft filled with pockets of heavy, toxic gas. He descended into the dark and was quickly overcome by the lack of oxygen. He found his secret chamber, but unfortunately, he became a permanent part of the exhibit, waiting for the next explorer to find him. 44. Alcohol is famous for giving people unearned confidence, but this Canadian man took it to a new level. After consuming a case of beer, he announced he was invincible and went into the forest to wrestle a moose. He found a 1,000-pound bull moose and charged at it, expecting a fair fight. The moose, confused and annoyed, responded with a single, casual kick. A moose kick can decapitate a wolf. Against a drunk human, it was game over instantly. Nature does not care about your liquid courage, and it definitely doesn't wrestle by Queensberry rules. 45. The Australian outback is beautiful but deadly, a fact lost on the do-it-for-the-gram generation. A group of tourists spotted a large dust devil, a mini tornado, swirling in the desert. While everyone else took photos from a distance, one man ran directly into the vortex for the ultimate selfie. He underestimated the wind speed. The vortex lifted him off his feet and slammed him violently into a nearby rocky outcrop. He wanted a cool profile picture. He ended up as a cautionary tale about respecting weather patterns and staying firmly on the ground. 46. Physics is a cruel mistress, especially when you use elastic materials for heavy lifting. Two brothers tried to steal an ATM by wrapping a chain around it and tying it to their truck bumper. One brother stood near the machine to guide it, while the other floored the accelerator. The ATM was bolted to concrete and didn't budge. The chain, however, snapped under the immense tension. It whipped back with the velocity of a bullet, striking the guide squarely in the chest. The robbery failed, and the only withdrawal made that night was the brother from the land of the living. 47. Toxic masculinity met actual toxicity in a garage. A man was bitten by a black widow spider, but refused to go to the hospital, telling his friends he was tougher than some little bug. He decided to sweat it out with a few beers. The neurotoxin, which shuts down the nervous system, was unimpressed by his machismo. By the time he admitted he might need a doctor, his diaphragm had stopped working. It turns out you can be the toughest guy in the room, but your nervous system still has to follow the rules of biology. 48. Construction sites are dangerous enough without treating power tools like toys. A worker thought it would be hilarious to dual-wield two pneumatic nail guns like a cowboy in a Western movie. He spun them around his fingers to show off his gunslinging skills to the crew. In a tragic misfire, his fingers slipped onto the trigger while the gun was pointed at his own chest. The nail gun fired with 120 psi of pressure, delivering a fatal blow to his heart. His Wild West fantasy ended abruptly, proving that industrial equipment makes for terrible props. 49. Celebrating too early is embarrassing in sports, but fatal on the railway. A man in Ukraine wanted to impress his friends with a death-defying stunt. He lay down between the tracks and let a freight train pass over him. Amazingly, he survived the terrifying ordeal unscathed. Overcome with adrenaline and triumph, he jumped up to cheer and wave to his friends. In his excitement, he failed to look at the adjacent track, stepping directly into the path of a second train coming from the opposite direction. He survived the hard part, only to fail the easy part, looking both ways before crossing.
1. In Illinois, a 30-year-old genius decided to redefine the concept of fine dining to win a simple bar bet. The challenge? Swallow a live 5-inch fish whole. Spoiler alert, the fish did not agree to these terms. He actually managed to get the wriggling creature down his throat, proving that determination is no substitute for common sense. However, the fish, presumably realizing it was in a very bad neighborhood, engaged its emergency brakes and lodged itself firmly in his windpipe. Paramedics arrived, but the aquatic blockade was immovable. He technically won the bet by swallowing it, but considering he suffocated moments later, I don't think he'll be cashing in those winnings anytime soon. 2. We head down to Mexico, where a woman at a hotel gym decided that stairs are for peasants and elevators are just too slow. She needed to shout something to a friend on the floor below. Instead of walking down or waiting for the elevator like a functional member of society, she stuck her head directly into the open service elevator shaft to yell down. It was a bold strategy. Unfortunately, she failed to check if the heavy steel carriage was currently in use. It was, and it was ascending rapidly. The conversation was cut short, along with everything else, proving that impatience is rarely a survival trait when heavy machinery is involved. 3. In Belgium, a mechanic faced the timeless struggle of trousers that just wouldn't stay up. Most of us would buy a belt, maybe some suspenders. This guy, he looked at an industrial compressed air hose and thought, yes, this is the future of fashion. He inserted the high-pressure nozzle into his pants to quote-unquote inflate them for a better fit. He created a perfect seal, and the 120 psi blast didn't just fluff his khakis, it inflated his entire body like a biological balloon. The massive pressure ruptured his internal organs instantly. It takes a special kind of innovator to turn a simple wardrobe malfunction into a fatal industrial accident. 4. A particularly clumsy burglar in California gave a masterclass in how not to flee a crime scene. While trying to escape a property he'd just robbed, he attempted to squeeze through an iron fence. He wasn't exactly a gymnast, and he got his head inextricably stuck between the bars. Now, getting stuck is embarrassing, but the tragedy is where he landed. He fell face first into a decorative garden puddle that was only a few inches deep. Unable to push himself up or pull his head free, he actually drowned in water shallow enough for a toddler to splash in. It's a harsh reminder that karma doesn't always wait for a court date. Sometimes it just uses the landscaping. 5. Zoos usually have rules like don't feed the animals and don't climb the fences, but they rarely have signs saying don't bite the camels because they assume people have brains. One visitor proved this assumption wrong. For reasons that defy all logic, he decided to bite a camel. The camel, who was just minding its own business, didn't bite back. Instead, it delivered the ultimate sit-down protest. The massive beast simply sat on him and refused to move until the man was crushed to death. It's hard to feel sympathy when you pick a fight with a desert animal that weighs half a ton and clearly has zero patience for your nonsense. 6. A group of college students in New York decided to throw a demolition party in an abandoned building, proving that higher education doesn't always guarantee common sense. The vibe was destructive. but their understanding of structural engineering was non-existent. One student took a sledgehammer to a primary support pillar on the ground floor, treating the building like a giant game of Jenga. Surprise, surprise! When you remove the thing holding the roof up, the roof comes down. The building collapsed instantly, burying the party under tons of rubble. It turns out that gravity is strictly enforced, even if you're just trying to have a good time breaking stuff. 7. Insurance fraud is generally illegal, but for two brothers in Ohio, it was also terminally stupid. They wanted to torch their failing sandwich shop for the payout. After their hired arsonist failed 3 times, which should have been a sign, they decided to do it themselves. They poured gasoline everywhere, filling the room with highly explosive fumes. Then, in a moment of staggering incompetence, one brother lit a cigarette to celebrate. The fumes ignited instantly, turning the shop and the brothers into a fireball. They finally succeeded in destroying the business, but they definitely won't be around to enjoy the check. It's the ultimate high deductible. 8. We live in an age of distraction, but a tourist in California took it to a terminal level. He was so engrossed in texting on his phone that the physical world became a background app. He walked past multiple warning signs, ignored the safety barriers, and strolled right off the edge of a 600-foot cliff. He was so focused on his screen that he didn't even look up to see the massive drop coming. It's a tragic modern way to go, missing the breathtaking view and the fatal drop because you were too busy reading a text message. Sometimes the most important notification is the ground rushing up to meet you. 9. In London, a young man apparently confused real life with a Marvel movie. He confidently announced to his mates that he possessed the supernatural ability to stop a moving vehicle with nothing but his bare hands. His friends, grounded in reality, were skeptical. To prove them wrong, he stepped into the middle of the street and held his palms out to an oncoming taxi like a traffic wizard. The taxi, weighing several tons and obeying the laws of momentum, did not stop. It didn't even slow down. His friends were no longer skeptical about his powers, but they were definitely convinced of his stupidity. He lost the argument and his life in a single thud, proving that physics doesn't care about your confidence level. 10. Down in Australia, a man decided that riding a horse was too mainstream and opted for something with more teeth. He broke into a zoo enclosure, apparently under the impression that he was the next Crocodile Dundee. He leaped onto the back of a 16-foot saltwater crocodile, treating an apex predator like a carnival ride. This reptile hasn't changed its design since the dinosaurs because it is a perfect killing machine. It reacted exactly as you'd expect an ancient murder log to react to an intruder. The crocodile thrashed, snapped, and quickly demonstrated why humans belong on the other side of the safety glass. It was a very short ride with a very permanent ending. 11. Industrial machinery is unforgiving, but human error is deadly. In a Michigan factory, a worker found himself in a nightmare scenario when his hand got snagged in a piece of heavy equipment. A panic-stricken coworker rushed over to save the day, intending to hit the emergency shutoff. In the heat of the moment, however, he slammed his hand down on the reverse button instead. Rather than stopping the gears, the machine shifted direction and pulled the trapped man even further into the mechanism. It's a horrific example of how panic can turn a bad situation into a catastrophe. Good intentions are great, but knowing which button stops the metal grinder is significantly more useful. 12. Checking your car's fuel level in the dark is a hassle, but a man in Oregon came up with a truly glowing solution. Lacking a flashlight, he decided to use the next best thing, an open flame. He flicked his cigarette lighter near the open fuel tank to see how much gas was left. The answer was enough to explode. The fumes ignited instantly, turning his sedan into a bomb. The resulting fireball provided a brief, spectacular moment of illumination that solved his visibility problem permanently. It turns out that gasoline and fire are famous enemies, and introducing them to each other is the last mistake you'll ever make. 13. A young couple in Ukraine was seeking a thrill and some privacy, so they chose a location that defies all survival instincts, the space between active railway tracks. They were so consumed by their romantic activities that they completely tuned out the world around them. The rhythmic noise of the rails masked the sound of the approaching train, and their distraction was absolute. The engineer sounded the horn, but they were too engrossed in the moment to react in time. The locomotive, weighing thousands of tons, didn't stop. Their romantic getaway ended abruptly, serving as a grim reminder that love might be blind, but it shouldn't be deaf to a freight train. 14. The things men do for love, or lust, are often baffling. At the National Zoo in DC, a man decided that flowers were too boring and that jumping into the cheetah enclosure was the best way to win his girlfriend's heart. He vaulted the wall and landed right in the middle of the habitat. The cheetahs, who usually spend their days napping and being bored, were absolutely delighted to have a live volunteer for their afternoon enrichment activity. They didn't see a suitor. They saw a slow-moving snack. He wanted to look like a hero, but he ended up looking like the world's most accessible chew toy. 15. A corporate lawyer in Toronto had a favorite party trick to prove the structural integrity of his skyscraper's windows. He would run full tilt and slam his body against the glass to show it was unbreakable. He had done this 23 times before, without issue. On the 24th attempt, he was technically proven right. The glass did not break. However, the window frame decided it had enough of his abuse and popped right out of the wall. He rode the unbroken pane of glass all the way down 24 stories to the pavement below. He was spectacularly correct about the glass, but fatally wrong about the physics of construction. 16. Two geniuses in Wisconsin found ice fishing to be too slow, so they decided to spice things up with a stick of dynamite. The plan was to blow a hole in the ice and stun the fish. They lit the fuse and tossed the explosive far out onto the frozen lake. Unfortunately, they brought their golden retriever along. The loyal dog, thinking this was a fun new game of fetch, sprinted across the ice, grabbed the hissing stick, and happily brought it right back to his masters in the fishing shack. The dog survived the run back, but the men didn't survive the delivery. It's a tragic reminder that your pet doesn't understand high explosives, but you really should. 17. At a party in Croatia, a man decided that regular entertainment was too boring and opted to juggle live hand grenades. For a few glorious seconds, he was the absolute center of attention, displaying a terrifying mix of dexterity and stupidity. But the problem with juggling is that eventually, gravity wins. He missed a catch, and the performance ended with a literal bang. The explosion took him out and abruptly ended the festivities. It is proof that some talents should be kept hidden, or at least performed with tennis balls instead of military-grade ordnance. He wanted to go out with a bang, and he certainly achieved that goal. 18. A Russian scientist studying a highly lethal virus accidentally pricked his finger with a contaminated needle. Logic dictates a code-red emergency response and immediate hospitalization. But this man suffered from a fatal case of intellectual arrogance. He was so convinced of his superior knowledge that he decided he didn't need doctors. He believed he could manage the infection himself. He treated one of the deadliest pathogens on Earth like a common cold, refusing medical intervention because he thought he was smarter than biology. By the time he finally admitted he was wrong, his internal organs had already tendered their resignation. He didn't die for science. He died because his ego was writing checks his immune system couldn't cash. 19. A Houston man wasn't trying to end his life. He was just arrogantly convinced he knew everything about firearms. To show off his knowledge to friends, he decided to demonstrate a safe version of Russian roulette using a semi-automatic pistol. He removed the magazine, smugly believing this made the weapon safe, but he completely forgot about the round already sitting in the chamber. He put the gun to his head, smiling with unearned confidence, and pulled the trigger to prove it wouldn't fire. He failed to understand the basic mechanics of the weapon. His lesson in gun safety was a one-time demonstration that cost him his life. 20. In the UK, a 16-year-old aspiring entrepreneur decided that stealing copper wire from an electrical substation was a brilliant get-rich-quick scheme. He bypassed the security fences and ignored those massive bright yellow signs that explicitly say, "Danger of death." Apparently, he thought they were just decorative suggestions for people with no sense of adventure. He was wrong. The moment his tools made contact with the live equipment, he discovered that 40,000 volts is the world's most aggressive security guard. He wanted the copper, but he ended up taking the lightning ride of a lifetime, proving that high-voltage electricity has absolutely zero tolerance for theft. 21. A man seeking the perfect lawn decided that standard lawn mowers were just too weak for his grass. His solution? He attached sharpened helicopter blades to a push mower engine, because if it can lift a chopper, it can surely trim the fescue. For a few glorious seconds, the contraption roared to life, creating a terrifying tornado of grass and debris. But engineering limits exist for a reason. The centrifugal force shattered the machine, sending a blade flying with lethal precision directly into his neck. It gave him the closest shave of his life, permanently retiring him from the landscaping business. 22. We've all been frustrated when a vending machine steals our money, but a man in Detroit took it personally. After the machine ate his quarter, he decided to fight back. He started rocking the 850-pound snack dispenser back and forth to shake his prize loose. In the heavyweight bout of man versus junk food, gravity was the referee. The machine tipped past its balance point and pinned him to the floor, crushing him flat. He lost his life over 25 cents and a bag of chips he never even got to eat. It was a total knockout. 23. In Brazil, a would-be car thief got a crash course in physics that he didn't survive. He tried to smash a car window with a massive rock to break in. He didn't account for the reinforced safety glass, which acted like a high-tension spring. The rock didn't shatter the glass. It bounced off with lethal velocity, flying straight back at him. It struck him squarely in the forehead, crushing his skull instantly. He collapsed onto the pavement and died right there next to the car he tried to steal. Police found a pristine vehicle and a thief who had successfully eliminated himself from the gene pool. 24. Technology is supposed to make life easier, not shorter. A driver in England put way too much faith in his car's GPS system. The digital voice told him to go straight, so he went straight. Right down a steep boat launch and into a freezing river. Bystanders watched in horror as his car began to sink, hearing him scream, "But the sat-nav told me to turn here." It's a wet and tragic reminder that just because a computer tells you to drive off a cliff or into a body of water, you still have the option to use your eyes and say no. 25. A young driver in Germany was running late for his own birthday party and got caught speeding. Instead of pulling over and taking the ticket like an adult, he panicked. He decided to switch seats with his passenger to avoid the blame, while the car was still moving at 60 miles per hour. Surprisingly, letting go of the steering wheel at highway speeds is a really bad idea. He lost control, crashed into a truck, and never made it to the party. He tried to dodge a fine and ended up paying the ultimate price for the world's worst magic trick. 26. A Delaware man wanted an insurance payout so badly he recruited a friend to accidentally run him over with a car. The plan was simple. Stand in front of the vehicle, give the signal, and take a gentle bump. Unfortunately, his friend wasn't a stunt driver. When the signal came, the driver hit the gas pedal instead of the brake. The car surged forward, turning a minor fraud attempt into a very real fatality. It turns out that trusting an incompetent friend with a 2-ton weapon is an insurance policy that definitely doesn't cover stupidity. 27. A homeowner in Ohio had a clogged drain and zero patience. He decided to play chemist by pouring a volatile cocktail of industrial-strength cleaners down the sink. When the clog didn't clear immediately, he did the equivalent of looking down the barrel of a loaded gun. He put his face directly over the drain to see what was happening. The chemicals chose that exact moment to react violently, erupting like a toxic volcano. The blast caught him right in the face, ending his plumbing career and his life. Next time, just call a professional or use a plunger. 28. A prisoner in Brazil came up with a slippery escape plan. He greased himself up with cooking oil and attempted to slide through the tiny food slot in his cell door. It worked for his head. It even worked for his shoulders. But hips don't lie. and they also don't fit through 6-inch openings. He got hopelessly wedged, unable to move forward or backward. Guards found him the next morning, stuck like a cork in a bottle, hanging halfway into the corridor. He died of asphyxiation, caught between confinement and a freedom he was never going to fit into. 29. An Alabama man was determined to win his local fishing tournament by any means necessary. He decided to bypass the whole rod and reel skill set and just threw a live electrical wire into the lake to stun the fish. His plan worked perfectly. The electricity definitely stunned everything in the water. The problem? He was standing in the water at the time. He managed to electrocute the fish and himself simultaneously. He didn't win the trophy, but he did earn a permanent spot in the Hall of Fame for shockingly bad ideas. 30. A man in Alaska received a suspicious package that looked like a bomb. He did the smart thing and took it to the police station. But then he did the incredibly dumb thing. While the officers were carefully examining it, he got impatient. He grabbed the package back and started shaking it vigorously, asking, "What do you think is in here?" The device was indeed a bomb, and it had a motion trigger. It detonated right there in the lobby. He went from being a responsible citizen to a pink mist in less than 5 seconds. 31. Two friends in Illinois were hanging out and decided that playing with a handgun was a good way to pass the time. One of them, convinced the weapon was empty, pointed it at his buddy as a joke and pulled the trigger. Spoiler, it wasn't a joke, and the gun wasn't empty. The bullet left the chamber at over 1,000 feet per second, delivering a punchline that nobody laughed at. It is the first rule of gun safety for a reason, and breaking it usually results in a funeral instead of a friendship. 32. Stealing a safe is heavy manual labor, so two burglars in Belgium tried to let gravity do the work. They shoved the heavy steel box out of a third-story window, expecting it to smash open on the pavement below. It was a solid plan, except for one detail. One of the thieves had gone downstairs to secure the area. He looked up at the exact wrong moment and successfully caught the falling safe with his entire body. He cushioned the blow for the safe, but unfortunately, his skeleton didn't survive the impact. Visa 33. A wedding reception in Russia turned tragic thanks to a prank that wasn't thought through. A guest decided to hide inside a massive industrial dryer, thinking it would be hilarious when he popped out. He closed the door, waiting for his moment. Another guest, oblivious to the human contents, loaded in some wet tablecloths and hit the start button. The prankster went for a terrifying spin cycle in high heat. By the time anyone realized he was in there, the machine had finished its job. It was a clean death, but definitely not a painless one. 34. A New York City street performer famous for burying himself alive decided his act needed a reboot. He built a custom plexiglass coffin to allow the audience to see him underground. However, he skipped the math class on structural integrity. When his assistants poured tons of wet concrete over the box, the plexiglass shattered under the immense weight. The concrete poured in, and his signature trick instantly became his final resting place. He wanted to leave the audience breathless, and ironically, he achieved exactly that, just not for the audience. 35. A British soldier with a grudge and a rudimentary understanding of explosives decided to mail a bomb to his commanding officer. He built the device perfectly, primed it, and packaged it. But then he made a bureaucratic error that cost him everything. He didn't put enough stamps on the parcel. The Royal Mail, being sticklers for postage, stamped it, returned to sender, and sent it right back to his house. Forgetting what he had mailed days earlier, or perhaps just assuming it was a gift from an admirer, he tore open the package. The bomb worked exactly as intended, just on the wrong target. It's a lesson in both vengeance and proper postage calculation. 36. Arizona is beautiful, but it's also sharp. After a heavy night of drinking, a 24-year-old man got into a heated argument with a friend. To prove just how tough and invincible he was, he decided his opponent would be a giant saguaro cactus. He sprinted full speed and headbutted the plant. Now, these cacti are basically telephone poles covered in needles. The impact didn't hurt the protected plant, but it drove hundreds of spines deep into his body. He went into shock and died shortly after, losing a fight to an opponent that literally couldn't move. 37. When you see a bear in the wild, common sense says, back away slowly. A man in North Carolina, however, saw a bear and thought, content opportunity. He sprinted toward the wild animal, phone in hand, desperate for that sweet social media engagement. The bear, unsurprisingly, did not want to be an influencer. It saw a threat invading its personal space and reacted with predictable violence. The mauling was fatal, ensuring that while his story went viral, he wasn't around to check the likes or read the comments. Nature isn't a backdrop, it's a participant, and it doesn't care about your follower count. 38. A man in Washington state owned a lava lamp that he felt was operating far too slowly. Being a man of action, he placed the glass lamp directly onto a hot stove burner to speed up the lava flow. Thermodynamics, however, is a strict mistress. The external heat caused the pressure inside the sealed glass vessel to skyrocket, and the lamp exploded like a frag grenade. A shard of glass pierced his heart, ending his life instantly. He wanted a bit of mood lighting, but thanks to a basic misunderstanding of physics, he ended up with lights out permanently. 39. A thrill seeker in Virginia decided to perform an unauthorized bungee jump off a 70-foot railroad trestle. To save money on professional gear, he rigged up his own system using several heavy-duty bungee cords strapped together. He carefully measured the cords to be slightly shorter than the height of the drop. However, he forgot one crucial law of physics. Bungee cords stretch. A lot. He leaped into the void. The cords did their job and elongated, right down to the solid ground below. He nailed the math on the length, but he completely failed the physics of elasticity. 40. A thief in Florida was in the middle of stealing a boat when the owner unexpectedly showed up. Panicking, the would-be pirate dove into the water to make his escape. He forgot one crucial detail. He was wearing a brand new, top-of-the-line, automatic inflation life vest. The moment he hit the water, the vest did its job perfectly and inflated instantly. The buoyancy pinned him face down under the dock, trapping him just inches below the surface. He drowned in his own escape gear, defeated by a safety device that worked exactly as advertised. 41. The quest for the ultimate angle can be deadly. Two women in Mexico climbed onto the roof of a van parked next to a rural airstrip to take a selfie. They were so busy posing and pouting that they completely ignored the roar of a small plane coming in for a landing. The pilot couldn't pull up in time, and the wing clipped them both, ending their photo shoot permanently. It's a tragic reminder that runways are for airplanes, not Instagram models, and propellers don't break for vanity. 42. A tourist at the Grand Canyon thought it would be hilarious to prank his friends by pretending to fall off the edge. He spent several minutes teetering on the brink, flailing his arms and getting a good laugh out of their terrified reactions. Once the joke was over, he took a step back to admire his comedic genius. He misjudged the distance, slipped, and actually fell off the cliff. He screamed all the way down, but his friends thought it was just the encore. The canyon, it seems, has a very dark, very literal sense of humor. 43. In 1989, a veteran skydiver served as the designated cameraman for a group jump. He was a professional, completely obsessed with capturing the perfect shot. He spent the flight up adjusting his heavy camera gear, checking lenses, and framing the scene. He was so hyper-focused on his job that his brain skipped the most essential step of the routine. He filmed the other divers jumping, then leaped out after them to get the angle. It was only as he fell, capturing stunning footage, that he reached for a ripcord that wasn't there. He had jumped without his parachute, a victim of his own extreme tunnel vision. 44. An Englishman decided that riding inside a Ferris wheel carriage was too boring. He climbed out and stood on the roof of the moving car to wave at the crowds below, feeling like the king of the world. Then physics kicked in. He lost his balance and fell off the roof. But he didn't hit the ground immediately. He landed in the path of the rotating wheel and was systematically crushed by every single carriage as the wheel continued its slow, methodical descent. It was a gruesome, slow-motion disaster that traumatized an entire fairground. 45. A man in Texas declared war on a wasp nest under his porch. His weapon of choice? High-powered fireworks taped to a pole. He lit the fuse, expecting a clean victory. The explosion did destroy the nest, but it also collapsed the porch roof and ignited the house. Instead of retreating to safety, he made a fatal error. He ran back into the inferno to try and save his beloved collection of vintage vinyl records. He became trapped by the falling debris and smoke. He managed to kill the wasps, sure, but the collateral damage included his home and his life. 46. In Arizona, two men decided that stealing a hot air balloon was the perfect crime. After a night of drinking, they found a tethered balloon and decided to take it for a joyride. They untied the ropes and floated off into the darkness, probably feeling like master criminals escaping into the night. But piloting a balloon requires skill, not just alcohol. They drifted aimlessly until they hit a set of high-voltage power lines. The balloon became entangled, and the electricity finished the job. They went out in a blaze of glory, just not the kind they expected. 47. An amateur lumberjack in Pennsylvania took on a massive tree in his backyard. He was laser-focused on his chainsaw in the trunk in front of him. He completely failed to look up and notice that his target tree was supporting several other dead, leaning trees. When he made the final cut, gravity took over. The main tree fell one way, but the dead trees it was holding up fell directly onto him. He was crushed instantly. He was so focused on the tree that he missed the forest, and the ton of timber hovering right above his head. 48. A pastor in Gabon, Africa, wanted to strengthen the faith of his congregation with a biblical miracle. He announced he would walk on water across a wide estuary. He gathered his flock on the shore and stepped out onto the water with absolute confidence. There was just one tiny detail he overlooked. He couldn't swim. Physics, being unreligious, took over immediately. He sank like a stone and drowned in front of his horrified audience. The miracle was a bust, but the lesson on buoyancy was unforgettable. 49. A student in California wanted to test the durability of a stab-proof vest he had purchased from a surplus store. To ensure the test was as realistic as possible, he decided to wear it during the experiment. He handed a hunting knife to his friend and gave the specific instruction to stab him directly in the chest. The friend obliged. Unfortunately, the vest was either of low quality or the aim was slightly off. The blade went straight through the fabric and into his heart. It serves as a sharp lesson that safety gear should always be tested on a dummy, not on your own vital organs. 1. A lost phone is a tragedy of modern life. But for one family in China, it became the catalyst for a multi-generational catastrophe. After a man dropped his new phone into a pit toilet, he made the fateful decision to go in after it. He was promptly overcome by the noxious fumes. His mother, seeing her son in peril, jumped in to save him, and met the same fate. This horrifying chain reaction continued, with his father, his wife, and two neighbors all descending into the toxic abyss, one after another. 6 people perished in a frantic, suffocating attempt to retrieve a single device, which, in the ultimate insult, was never even recovered. 2. That relentless chirping from a smoke detector can test anyone's sanity. But for one college student, it was a declaration of war. His solution? To bypass ladders and batteries, and instead grab the 2 live wires from the ceiling with his bare hands. As he was being introduced to the concept of electricity in the most direct way possible, his roommate ran in. Instead of cutting the power, this second genius decided the best way to help was to grab his friend, creating a brief but illuminating career as a human conductor. The good news is the annoying beeping stopped. Permanently. 3. There's a fine line between a hobby and a fatal obsession. A gamer in South Korea obliterated that line by playing an online RPG for 50 hours straight, forgoing trivial things like food, water, and sleep. He was on an epic quest for virtual glory, trading his real-world health bar for a digital experience bar. He may have reached the highest level and acquired legendary loot, but his own biological hardware couldn't handle the strain. He suffered a massive cardiac arrest, learning the hard way that in the game of life there's no respawn, no extra lives, and the final game over is terrifyingly permanent. 4. Slow service at a drive-thru is annoying. For one man in Britain, it was an injustice that demanded immediate, furious confrontation. He flung his door open and stormed toward the window to yell at the staff, but in his blind rage, he overlooked a crucial detail: putting his car in park. As he was delivering a passionate speech on customer service, his own vehicle silently, slowly, rolled forward and pinned him against the building. He was ultimately taken out not by an employee, but by his own car, which delivered its own brand of instant, karmic service. 5. Competitive eating is a sport of sheer willpower and questionable life choices. A contestant in a sausage-eating contest was proving his dominance, powering through his 43rd sausage when he tragically choked. Amid the stunned silence of the crowd, you just know someone turned to their friend and whispered, "Okay, but does that one still count for his score?" He died a champion of processed meat, a true martyr to the cause of gluttony, leaving behind a legacy that was both impressive and profoundly sad. He won the battle, but the sausage won the war. 6. When faced with a blocked toilet, most people reach for a plunger. One man reached for a gallon of gasoline and a match. He decided that the best way to clear a simple clog was with a catastrophic fuel-air explosion. The result was technically a success. The clog was gone. Unfortunately, so was the toilet, the bathroom walls, and the man himself, who was launched on a non-stop one-way trip through what used to be his ceiling. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the simplest solution isn't to add fire and gasoline to a porcelain bowl. 7. A man named Larry Walters decided to live out his dream of flying, not with a plane, but with a simple lawn chair and 42 weather balloons. His invention actually worked, lifting him to an altitude of over 11,000 feet, directly into the flight path of LAX. The only problem was his descent plan, which consisted entirely of a pellet gun to pop the balloons. After shooting one, the chair tilted violently, and Larry slid out, discovering that the laws of gravity are significantly less forgiving than the rules of amateur aviation. He went up a legend and came down as a cautionary tale. 8. In the wild lands of Wyoming, a hunter decided to test his skills against a 2,000-pound bison. His weapon of choice? A bow and arrow, from a mere 20 yards away. He managed to land a shot, which did little more than enrage the furry locomotive. The arrow acted less like a weapon and more like a start button for a very angry, very fast bulldozer. The bison closed the 20-yard gap in seconds and proceeded to give the hunter a very personal, hands-on, and ultimately final lecture on the food chain and the importance of choosing appropriate weaponry. 9. In an age where everything is for the gram, some people will risk it all for the perfect shot. During a massive storm, one man ignored every single warning sign, barrier, and basic survival instinct to capture an image of a huge wave crashing against a pier. And he got it. It was probably breathtaking. But the ocean, apparently not a fan of being used for clout, immediately sent a follow-up wave, bigger and angrier than the first. It swept him, his camera, and his final, unposted masterpiece out to sea, proving that nature always gets the last shot. 10. We've all felt the rage of a vending machine stealing our last dollar. But while most of us just mutter a curse and walk away, one man in Washington decided to escalate the situation with a pipe bomb. His plan to liberate a stolen soda worked flawlessly. The machine exploded spectacularly. He stepped out from behind cover to claim his fizzy prize, only to be immediately and fatally flattened by the 300-pound steel door, which had just completed its brief flight and was now returning to Earth. The machine got its revenge and the soda remained unvended. 11. A man noticed his car was leaking gasoline. Needing a better look under the chassis to diagnose the problem, he reached for a tool. Not a flashlight, not a phone, but a cigarette lighter. The cloud of gasoline vapor that had been patiently pooling under the car was thrilled to finally meet a naked flame. The ensuing explosion instantly confirmed the location of the leak and simultaneously solved all of the man's future automotive problems in the most permanent way imaginable. His diagnosis was brief but 100% accurate. 12. Victory was just moments away for a French cyclist in the Tour de France. He was so far ahead of the competition that he decided to start his celebration lap a little early. He took both hands off the handlebars, blowing kisses and waving to the adoring crowd, completely absorbed in his own impending glory. Unfortunately, he failed to notice the sharp turn ahead, or the large parked media van that was there specifically to film his triumphant win. He plowed directly into it, crossing a very different kind of finish line than he'd intended. 13. On a high-rise construction site, safety regulations are written in blood. One worker, however, saw them as mere suggestions. Needing just a little extra reach for a quick job, he decided a safety harness was too much trouble. Instead, he confidently placed an empty 5-gallon bucket upside down and stood on it. The bucket, being a bucket and not a stable platform, immediately betrayed him. His career in construction and his tenure among the living ended abruptly 30 stories below. In a way, it was the quickest job he ever completed. 14. To prove the strength of the windows in his high-rise office, a corporate lawyer in Toronto enjoyed showing visitors how he could bounce his entire body off the glass, 24 stories up. He had done this stunt dozens of times. But one day, in front of a group of prospective students, he threw himself against the window one last time. The glass didn't break. The entire window frame, however, popped out of the building, sending him on a very brief, unscheduled journey to the courtyard below. 15. At a medieval fair, a man fully decked out in authentic, heavy plate armor got into a heated argument near the castle's decorative moat. To dramatically prove a point about his supposed invincibility, he leaped onto a rickety wooden railing for emphasis. The railing, unimpressed by his theatrics, snapped. He plunged into 6 feet of water, where he immediately discovered that 100 pounds of steel is not conducive to floating. His final battle was not against a dragon, but against the simple, undefeated laws of buoyancy. 16. After robbing a convenience store, a Florida man had a moment of paranoid genius. He worried the stolen cash might have hidden tracking devices. His high-tech solution: to cleanse the money by blasting it in his microwave. He forgot, however, that modern US currency contains a metallic security strip. The appliance instantly turned into a miniature lightning storm, igniting the cash and his apartment with it. He wasn't brought down by the police, but by the toxic smoke of his own smoldering loot in a deeply flawed money laundering scheme. 17. An Irish farmer, fed up with his particularly belligerent bull, devised a plan rooted in pure, unadulterated ego. He believed he could assert his dominance not with a fence or a prod, but with an intense, soul-piercing stare-down. He strode confidently into the field, locked eyes with the 1-ton beast, and held his ground. The bull, accepting this non-verbal challenge, proceeded to demonstrate that a stare has never stopped a freight train of muscle and fury. The farmer learned a valuable and very final lesson in animal psychology. 18. To prove to his friends that his pet python was just a misunderstood, gentle giant, a man let the snake begin to constrict around his neck. "See," he likely gurgled, "he's just giving me a hug." The python, however, was just doing what millions of years of instinct had trained it to do, and perhaps got a little too enthusiastic in its embrace. The man's demonstration of interspecies trust quickly turned into a fatal, one-sided lesson in the mechanics of strangulation, proving that a predator is always a predator. 19. After being fired, a disgruntled office worker concocted a truly vile plan for revenge. He was going to defecate in the company water cooler. To get the proper angle over the large container, he precariously balanced himself on his rolling desk chair. The chair, obeying the laws of physics rather than the man's quest for vengeance, promptly rolled out from under him. He fell, hit his head, and his grand act of defiance was cut short. One can only imagine the sheer confusion of the person who eventually discovered that bizarre and tragic scene. 20. In the middle of a New York City traffic jam, one driver decided the rules of civilization no longer applied to him. He was simply too important to wait. With a blast of his horn and a sense of entitlement, he swerved his car onto the crowded sidewalk to bypass the lesser mortals stuck in traffic. He successfully passed maybe 3 cars before having a very sudden and aggressive meeting with a fire hydrant. The initial crash was bad, but the real show started when the hydrant sheared off. A geyser of high-pressure water erupted, flipping his car onto its roof and trapping him inside. He beat the traffic, but was ultimately defeated by municipal plumbing. 21. A cancelled flight is a modern-day tragedy, but one Canadian man's protest went far beyond a strongly worded tweet. He decided to make his point by climbing onto the airport baggage carousel. He was promptly whisked behind the rubber curtains and into the vast, automated labyrinth of the baggage handling system. While he certainly didn't make his intended flight, he did embark on a final, unscheduled tour of the airport's mechanical guts. His luggage, one assumes, eventually made it to its destination, blissfully unaware of its owner's bizarre final journey. 22. There's a special kind of joy that comes with a brand new, perfectly sharp chainsaw. One man, buzzing with excitement, was eager to test its power on the nearest piece of wood available. As fate would have it, that piece of wood was the main support beam for his own front porch. The chainsaw, to its credit, performed flawlessly, slicing through the timber with ease. The porch roof, now suddenly and completely unsupported, also performed flawlessly, obeying the laws of gravity with immediate and crushing enthusiasm. 23. Working as a window washer on an 80-story skyscraper in Dubai requires a deep respect for safety equipment. One worker, however, felt his safety line was just getting in the way of his efficiency. He unhooked it for just a second to clean a particularly tricky spot. As if on cue, a sudden gust of wind swept across the face of the building to provide a live-action demonstration of why that's a catastrophically bad idea. His quest for temporary convenience resulted in a very permanent solution to all his future employment concerns. 24. A tourist on a fishing pier spotted a large pelican with a freshly caught fish in its gullet. Seeking a cool, viral video, he decided to poke the multi-pound wild bird with his fishing rod. Startled and annoyed, the pelican took flight, and in the process regurgitated the heavy, slimy fish. The fish plummeted like a scaly missile, striking the man squarely on the head. The impact sent him tumbling off the pier and into the water below. He successfully provoked the bird, and in return, it delivered his final meal via airmail. 25. The sport is called volcano boarding, and it's exactly as terrible an idea as it sounds. One thrill seeker in New Zealand was carving his way down the side of an active volcano at high speed when he hit a patch of loose gravel. This minor error sent him veering off course directly into a geothermal steam vent. The extreme heat and pressure of the vent instantly transformed him from an adrenaline junkie into a perfectly flash-cooked cautionary tale. He went looking for a rush and found a pressure cooker instead. 26. An Italian man watched in horror as his prized Porsche got stuck on a set of train tracks. He smartly jumped out to safety, but as the freight train thundered closer, a terrible calculation occurred in his mind. Was his beautiful car worth more than his life? In a split second of profoundly misplaced priorities, he sprinted back to try and save it. The train, which doesn't care about luxury automobiles, made the final decision for him. It was a spectacular collision that permanently settled the man versus machine debate. 27. A man in Seattle discovered a single, solitary spider in his laundry room. A rational person might have used a shoe or a paper towel. This hero, however, believed in overwhelming force. He fashioned a homemade flamethrower using a can of spray paint and a lighter. And it worked. The spider was instantly incinerated. But in his moment of victory, he overlooked a key scientific principle. Superheating an aerosol can turns it into a grenade. The resulting explosion not only vaporized the laundry room, but also took him with it, ensuring the spider was avenged by the laws of physics. 28. A French performance artist conceived of his masterpiece, an immersive experience he titled a commentary on consumption. The piece involved him wrapping himself in pounds of raw meat and lying down in a cage with a dozen hungry vultures. The vultures, apparently also being discerning art critics, gave the installation a rave review, a very interactive, very hands-on review. The artist truly became one with his art, literally consumed by his own creation in the most final performance of his career. 29. Some home improvement projects are ill-advised. Others are actively suicidal. A man in the US decided his front yard was missing a certain something, a 40-foot municipal lamppost. His tool for this ambitious heist was a chainsaw. Yes, a chainsaw against a thick metal pole. Ignoring the volcano of sparks, he finally cut through the base. He stepped back to admire his work, just as the multi-ton steel pole remembered that gravity was still a thing. The prize he so desperately wanted was delivered directly to him, via a fatal, high-velocity impact. 30. In the majestic Arizona desert, one man declared war on a cactus. His weapon of choice against the 20-foot saguaro was a shotgun. After blasting away at its base, he finally succeeded in felling the giant. The massive plant began to teeter and then fall. But in a final slow-motion act of botanical revenge, it tipped directly onto him. Let's be clear, he was outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and ultimately crushed to death by a very, very patient plant. Nature doesn't always need claws and teeth to win. 31. A man in China devised a brilliant plan to steal electricity by tapping directly into a high-voltage power line with a pair of pliers. He felt perfectly safe, of course, because he was wearing a pair of thick rubber boots. What he tragically forgot was that the tall metal ladder he was standing on was a fantastic conductor for a current of "you are about to die." A fact that was demonstrated to him with about 10,000 volts of absolute, electrifying certainty, proving a little knowledge can be a very dangerous thing. 32. A would-be thief decided to siphon some free gasoline from a parked tour bus. Working in the dark, he fumbled for the intake pipe and stuck his hose in. Unfortunately for his taste buds, he had chosen the wrong port. Instead of gasoline, he got a full, horrifying mouthful of raw chemical waste from the onboard toilet. In a violent fit of revulsion, he spat it out, inhaling the toxic fumes and dying almost instantly from the septic shock. It was, without a doubt, a truly crappy way to go. 33. While fleeing from the police, a car thief had the clever idea to hide in a multi-story parking garage. He floored it, racing up the spiral ramp to the top floor where he could lay low. The plan was solid, right up until the part where he forgot that brakes are a necessary component of driving. He crashed straight through the concrete barrier at the top, taking a very direct, gravity-assisted shortcut back down to street level. In his defense, he definitely lost the cops. 34. To capture the ultimate viral video, a tourist in San Francisco decided to skateboard down the city's famously winding Lombard Street. But he didn't just ride it. He decided to luge it, lying flat on his back for maximum velocity. He became a human missile careening down the brick-paved curves, only to realize far too late that the luge position offers precisely zero steering and even less braking. He shot out of the final turn like a cannonball and embedded himself in the side of a passing cable car, creating a video that was probably more popular at the morgue than on TikTok. 35. You would think that a professional hot air balloon pilot would have a firm grasp of the single most important concept of his job: hot air rises. While inflating his balloon on the ground, this particular expert decided he needed to climb the outside of the fabric to fix a rope. The balloon, dutifully obeying the laws of thermodynamics, began to ascend. He found himself 50 feet in the air, clinging desperately to his own massive floating mistake, before his short, impromptu flight was permanently and abruptly grounded. 36. The game of chicken with a freight train is a contest with a 100% predictable outcome. A group of teenagers decided to test this theory, but one of them was determined to be the undisputed champion of terrible ideas. He waited, letting the multi-ton locomotive get closer and closer, planning to jump at the absolute last possible second to prove his courage. Unfortunately, his timing was just a fraction of a second off. The train, which remains undefeated and untied in the history of the game, effortlessly maintained its perfect record. 37. Dehydration in the vast Arizona desert is a swift and serious threat. When rescuers found a man's body just a few hundred yards from his abandoned car, the cause of death was clear. The tragic irony, however, was discovered when they opened the trunk. Inside, they found a full, completely unopened case of bottled water. He had the solution to his fatal problem within arm's reach, but was apparently saving it for what he considered a real emergency. His planning skills were, to put it mildly, fatally flawed. 38. A Kansas man wanted a marriage proposal his girlfriend would never forget. He hired a plane to fly over with a "Marry Me" banner. For the grand finale, he planned to personally light a celebratory fireworks display from the bed of his truck. A single stray spark, however, landed in the open box of industrial-grade explosives right next to him. The proposal instantly went from a romantic question to a very loud, very chaotic, and very final statement. To this day, nobody is entirely sure if she said yes. 39. While cramming for a major exam, a college student decided to wage war on sleep itself. His arsenal consisted of an entire pharmacy's worth of caffeine pills, which he consumed in a desperate attempt to power through the night. The strategy worked, in a way. He took so many that he suffered a fatal caffeine overdose. On the bright side, in his final, hyper-aware moments, he probably absorbed every last piece of information for the test. He just wasn't able to show up to prove it. 40. At the local community pool's Hold Your Breath the Longest competition, there was one clear and dominant winner. He outlasted every other contestant by an astonishing margin, floating silently in the water. The celebration was cut short, however, when the judges realized he hadn't just won the competition. He had passed out from oxygen deprivation and drowned. In a final, bureaucratic insult, he was posthumously disqualified for his performance. 41. One man decided that the best way to celebrate the 4th of July was to use his own head as a mobile launch pad for a powerful firework mortar. His friends, recognizing a viral moment in the making, filmed the entire thing. The fuse was lit, but instead of launching majestically into the night sky, the firework ignited and burrowed directly into his skull. He succeeded in becoming a party legend, just not in the way he had envisioned. His 15 minutes of fame lasted about 3 seconds. 42. Picture a party in a Calgary high-rise. The elevator is slow, but one guest saw a shortcut: the garbage chute. To him, it wasn't a filthy tube of refuse. It was a private VIP express slide to the ground floor. For maximum velocity, he dove in headfirst, embarking on an exhilarating 12-story ride. A pro travel tip, however: always check your destination. His journey ended exactly where you'd expect: in the crushing, unforgiving steel jaws of the building's trash compactor. A truly one-star experience. 43. In a bizarre quest for a moontan, a California man lay naked on the sloping roof of his house at night and promptly fell asleep. As he slept, he slowly rolled off the edge. He didn't land in soft bushes, but directly onto the decorative, sharp, wrought iron fence spears that lined his neighbor's property below. He tragically succeeded in his goal of becoming one with the night sky, just in a much more permanent and impaled fashion than he had planned. 44. As an act of supreme comedic genius, a college student on a dare swallowed his fraternity's live pet goldfish. The prank was hilarious for about 30 seconds, until the goldfish, fighting for its own life in a bizarre, fleshy prison, swam down the wrong pipe and became firmly lodged in his airway. In a final act of defiance, the fish lost its battle for survival, but it made damn sure to take its tormentor with it, proving that karma sometimes comes with gills. 45. A man in Germany was so fed up with pigeons on his balcony that he built an elaborate cartoon-style trap. A net connected to a heavy anvil, balanced precariously on the railing. When he finally caught a bird, He rushed out gleefully to claim his prize, tripped on his own trigger rope, and pulled the anvil directly down on top of himself. The pigeon flew away. The man did not. 46. Stealing a live lobster from a grocery store tank is a bold crime. Stuffing it down your pants is a catastrophically stupid one. The lobster, understandably upset about its new accommodations, clamped its claw onto the most sensitive part of the thief's anatomy. Overcome with blinding pain, the man shrieked, stumbled backward out of the store's automatic doors, and fell directly into the path of a city bus. 47. An Oklahoma man decided it was time to get rid of a large beehive in his yard. His tool for this delicate operation was not poison or professional, but a baseball bat. He took a mighty swing, shattering the hive into 1,000,000 pieces. In response, a furious cloud of several thousand bees emerged, ready for war. As he turned to flee in a panic, he tripped and fell directly into the buzzing, angry swarm. He successfully removed the hive, and in the process, removed himself from the gene pool. 48. A museum thief had a brilliant plan. Swap a priceless ancient vase with a flawless fake. He made his way to the display after hours and successfully made the switch. But in his moment of quiet triumph, perched on his ladder, he did a little victory dance. He slipped, falling directly onto the real priceless vase he had just placed on the floor. It shattered, impaling him with a massive, razor-sharp shard of ancient pottery. He was taken out by the very treasure he had just stolen. 49. A man in rural Russia found his car's engine block was frozen solid in the bitter cold. His solution was not to use a block heater, but to light a small, gentle fire under the oil pan to thaw it out. The gentle fire quickly found the car's fuel lines, and the vehicle exploded in a massive fireball. On the plus side, his problem was solved. The engine was no longer frozen. In fact, there was no longer an engine or a car, or for that matter, a man.
That concludes our tour of the shallow end of the gene pool. Now, I want the truth in the comments. Have you ever done something so incredibly stupid that you should be on this list, but pure luck saved you? Confess your near-Darwin moment below. I know you have one. If you survived this video, hit subscribe and like so we can keep laughing at history's worst decisions together.